There seems to be a video every day of someone recording Gardaí abusing or assaulting someone who, often somebody who has done nothing. There's plenty of them online, but my experience of corruption in the Gardaí is probably as bad an example as there is out there, and it's a corruption that cost my mother her life. In December 2023, I went over to my mother's house. She was a chronic alcoholic and a prescription drug abuser most of her life, and God love her, since her husband died, she just she was very difficult to care for. I tried. I lived with her for 5 months. I had to leave again. The drinking was horrendous. Her demons. But anyways, yeah, like I went over to her house December 19th, 2023, with shopping for her, and I to use her phrase, she would use herself, read her the riot act about her drinking and told her, if she didn't stop fucking drinking, she was going to end up in care. And what else? I wrote a letter of complaint to her GP because the medication the GP was giving her eventually killed her, combined with a fatal amount of alcohol. But the GP never listened, unbelievably. But anyways, yeah. So I brought her over to shopping. My mother didn't like being told the truth. Obviously, she didn't appreciate being read the riot act. But it was you had to be harsh with her sometimes for her own sake, because often in the past it had brought her back. It had sobered her up. It had made her think, and she, like, just before she hit the drink that Christmas, like, I had just gotten her to start going back to AA. She was praising me in AA meetings for all I did for her. Like, but she hit the drink at Christmas because her son, my brother, died around Christmas 2006, and she always drank heavy at Christmas. But anyways, I had moved out of her house. I was living in the Dalton Inn Hotel in Claremorris, and 3 days later, December the 21st, 2023, a knock on my hotel room door. Six Gardaí from Castlebar, headed by Garda Dever, um, came into the room. I had no clue why they were there, but I suspected it was to do with my mother, because whenever anyone told her something she didn't like, she had a long history of making false accusations. God love her, she wasn't well. Like, she accused my sister of stealing thousands off her late husband's credit card, but it was all in her head. Like, she did that. The Gardaí were very, very aware of her. She uh, as one Garda said to me in Castlebar one time, I can't remember her name, but I told her, my mother does make false allegations, that. And she said to me, sure, who'd listen to her? They knew she was lonely, because it was hard to care for her when she was drinking. It was incredibly emotionally disturbing, like. But we did our best. My family did, like, more or less did what they could, and you couldn't really hold it against my siblings and my sister and brothers for abandoning her years ago. It's incredibly hard. Nobody can ever know what I've been through trying to save my mother's life. Nobody will ever understand that. I hope nobody ever has to understand it. So anyways, yeah, I was arrested and brought to Castlebar Garda Station. My response to being arrested was, my mother makes false allegations. That's what she does. Castlebar Gardaí knew that. They also knew I've no history of assaulting anyone. The only times I've been involved in those things is a couple of times where I've had to defend myself from people threatening to knife me, things like that. But I've never assaulted anyone. I'm 44. Up until I became homeless in 2020, I had no court record. I'd not really come to the attention of Gardaí other than traffic fines. I certainly never assaulted anybody, let alone my 66-year-old chronic alcoholic, unwell mother. As my mother would often say herself, um, of all the bad things I've done, none of my lads have ever put a finger on me, and we never would have. that's just not how we were brought up. You know, she wasn't well. We all knew that. We all knew when to walk away when the abuse got too much. You know, but like, so yeah, I was brought to Castlebar Gardaí Station, and I kind of felt it was like, this is procedural. You have to a complaint. If a complaint is made of assault, it has to be investigated. So they have to bring me over, take a statement, and surely that'll be the end of that. Like, you know. But why they took my mother seriously was because of my record with Galway City and Mayo County Council, where for 3 years of arguing and losing my almost losing my life over it, almost losing my sanity over being homeless. I mean, I couldn't live with my mother all the time. When she was drinking, she didn't want people there. She didn't want you living there. She'd kick you out, and you'd have to go out in the street, like, you know. So I fell on hard times in 2020. I ended up homeless at Christmas 2022 in Galway, after asking why there was no food for people in the Glen Oaks Cope homeless shelter in Galway City. I was thrown out 8 days before Christmas for complaining about that. That shelter has since been shut down and the funding stopped for Cope. So, you know, that's all I can say about that. But there's no food for people to eat. I got thrown out for asking. Anyways, so I lost my shit with the councils over that, being fucking essentially blacklisted and abandoned by the councils. And the night I was brought to Castlebar Gardaí Station, and I was in the holding cell. I had made my statement. I had proven, you know, that I didn't hit my mother. It was, I mean, the things that she claimed were said and done, there was no evidence of. There was no evidence of it. So there was no statement. That's the important part. She never signed a statement. According to her, she never signed any statement. So they falsified the charge and the statement, apparently. So anyways, the Garda came in my cell, and to my horror, I was told I was being charged. I nearly fell to the fucking floor, and I said, Garda Dever, you know me. How can you charge someone you know is innocent with an offence? And he looked at me and said, because you're acting the bollocks with the council. So, like, being homeless and asking for somewhere to live in the eyes of Gardaí, that's acting the bollocks. Being denied accommodation or somewhere to rent and thinking that 16,000 people living in fucking hotels is unfair. And if you say anything, you're acting the bollocks and will falsify a charge of hurting your mother against you. So I have to live with the thought that my mother died because I was homeless. You know, had I not been through enough, you know. So anyways, I was charged with threatening and assaulting my own mother. Unbelievable, like, you know, she wasn't well. So I had bail conditions imposed that meant I couldn't have contact with her. I had just gotten her to start going back to AA. She had nobody else to help her. So she just hit the drink again without anyone to talk to. There was nothing left for her after her husband died. We were all she had. Well, I was pretty much all she had left, you know. But then bail conditions. I already had bail conditions from losing my shit and sending threatening emails to Galway City Council. So this was a reprisal, you know. This was to teach me a lesson. We can falsify a charge against you. We'll act like the courts. We'll accuse you of hurting your mother to disgrace you, to try and, you know, destroy your character. And we won't give a shit consideration to what damage it does your mother with no one to look after her. So my mother was found dead alone in her house. She died from aspirational pneumonia and had a fatal amount of alcohol in her system when she died, along with medication she shouldn't have been on in the first place. So, since I was wrongly arrested for the last, I made 4 requests in writing to Castlebar Gardaí Station for a copy of any statements my mother made, and for the video recording with Garda's John Murphy and Gardaí Falsified in Castlebar, and I've never been granted access to them, even though the Freedom of Information Act gives me the right to have that statement and to have that video recording. Four written letters to the superintendent of Castlebar. The fourth one wasn't ignored, and I was sent a letter in the post with the contact details for the Gardas, the Freedom of Information Office in the Gardaí, the Subject Access Request Office, whatever you call it, Data Request Office, and they came back 6 months later saying it's taken an unusually long time to access the information you've asked for. And in the end, they came back and they gave me was the statement taken from me in writing by Garda Liam Dever and Garda John Murphy in Castlebar Garda Station on the 19th of December 23. And I asked for the video recording because anyone who watches this video recording, it's brutally obvious that it was predetermined I was getting charged no matter what I said. No matter that I had video evidence proving that I had not hurt my mother, and yeah, the night that she was, the night that I last saw her, I went to Castlebar Garda Station and tried to report her neighbour, who was controlling her, taking her money, and using her property to store his used cars on. He was taking advantage of her. I went into Castlebar Garda Station and was told what he was doing was not criminal. That was 3 days, and 3 days later they arrested me. Subsequently, it turned out that this same fellow who was abusing and taking advantage of my mother told my mother to tell Gardaí that I had assaulted her. He warned her to tell Gardaí that I assaulted her. So I tried to report this person, and I was told what he was doing wasn't a crime. He was threatening my mother. He probably punched her. She had a black eye. I only found that out from my brother a few months ago. She actually had a black eye. So this guy, unless she fell down drunk, which was rare, but the likelihood is that this guy assaulted my mother and threatened her and warned her to tell the guards I did it. The reason for that is the same day, the last day, the 19th of December 23, the last time I was in my mother's house, I warned him to stay away from my mother, and if he went near her again or took her money or bought her alcohol, more importantly again, that I'd be going to the guards. So he went in there, threatened her. And what did the Gardaí do? They see an opportunity to act like the courts and punish me and falsify a charge with no statement, no evidence, nothing. My mother was awful apologetic. She was texting me the following February, saying how sorry she was. She lied to them and that. The charge was struck out the following April the 4th. The Gardaí never made disclosure. The piece of evidence that legally has to go to your solicitor. The disclosure was never given to my solicitor, which is obscene. Like it, it doesn't happen because obviously there was no evidence. It was a falsified charge from start to finish, completely falsified. It wouldn't be a big deal, but it did cost my mother her life when she was found dead in her house this year. With no one left to look after her. So, yeah, I think about 40 emails to GSOC, the Garda Ombudsman, FISRU as they're called now, outlining the evidence and the things my mother told me that prove the charge was falsified. No statement, no evidence. I have no history of assault. My mother had a history of making false allegations. So Gardaí and Castlebar, at the very least, they took advantage of and exploiting my mother, a lonely person, a vulnerable person, just to punish and to act like the courts and punish me, but they didn't give any consideration to her. That's I hate to think we live in a country where if you stand up to the wrong and the evil that causes 16,000 people to be homeless, the Gardaí can come along and say, well, we're going to fucking let your mother die alone in the house to punish you. I don't believe we live in that country. I can't believe that. But I believe we do live in a country with corrupt Gardaí in Castlebar Garda Station, Garda Liam Dever, Garda John Murphy, and whoever Garda Dever's supervisor was at the time. They knew this charge was false. They knew it was a false allegation, but they went ahead and falsified the paperwork anyways. So I'm no liar. I've no history of assault. I had no criminal record before I became homeless. Before I was left on the fucking streets of Galway and Mayo to die and put in prison for 2 months for sending an email asking why are there so many homeless in the country. I'm no criminal. I'm no liar. We're living in a country with corrupt, dangerous Gardaí, and we need to get rid of them. Do it for your own mother. That's all from me, folks. I had to get that down on video because I go mad otherwise. I'd go mad otherwise. I have to keep a record of these things.